Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the September open round of Behes. We are with the Lions who are into the semi-finals round of this Behes round. So I welcome both the teams, L002 and L005. To begin, let me invite the first speaker from the proposition to open the case for us.
Am I audible properly?
Yes, you are.
So we, L002, are going in the motion. This house believes in one country, one language. One does not inhibit a country, one inhibits a language, that is our country, our motherland. In Bible, the Lord said, if as one people, all sharing a common language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be beyond them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they won't be able to understand each other. Together we stand as one country because of unity. And linguistic unity is only going to boost that, can bring us even more together, for we will be able to share our opinions more freely. Holistically speaking, due to different languages in India, we face communication problems everywhere. Geographically speaking, there are many places in India and elsewhere or in any other country which is isolated from the other. So the people of that region who use the same language who don't use the same language think that they're separate from other regions in the same country. They develop a sense of parochialism, a limited or narrow outlook. Let us go back to the history, for history is what our present depends upon. So we have Balkan Wars, which happened during 1912 to 1913, that ultimately led to the plundering World War I. Happened because if these regions could not identify themselves as one country, as one region or one territory to rule upon, for they did not have one language. It brought the world to its ruins. And that would happen if we continue this practice of having multiple languages in the same country, for people who won't be able to connect themselves. There are people who are who think it's retrogressive to have one language, but it is not. It will bring us more together. So, for example, political aspects. Time and again, we see politicians speaking about that India is a diverse country, that we should promote we should promote all the language and its diversity. But this thing is taken as leverage in India. And elsewhere, people speak about, they try to gain loyalty from the people on the basis of their language. To get vote, different political groups instigate to promote local language or dialect, and it's politically used to do that. And about blind loyalty, a group develops blind lingualism towards their own language. They feel it's superior and the others are inferior, which is not good. We cannot stand together if we keep finding faults in others or ourselves, for that matters. Then multiple language divides. Communicating in different language may not aid in getting across the main crux or the emotion of the thing. Love, one of the strongest emotions in the world, which makes the whole world go around. Communication is the impetus that keeps us in this loop. One language in one country helps them work better. Sharing the same language helps us work better together. So we have heard about two states in our country, precisely two states, two language, two religion, two traditions, and one love. And they had to say, suffer from a lot of problems. It's a long journey to attain their final destiny or destination, and that happens because we are divided. So collaborating, problem solving, the mutual engagement of people in a coordinated effort to solve a problem together plays a critical role in linguistically diverse and interconnected world. But let us ask ourselves, we live in a world where we do not know who our next door neighbor is. We have gone to the moon, but we do not communicate with people in this world where we are communicating, but we never this far apart. So what about that? In this world, in COVID times, where we are finding it very difficult to connect with people emotionally, language plays a very, very important role in matchmaking, in talking to people and getting to know in this world. And then, it's very important for people may develop an inferiority complex due to multiple languages in the same country. Yeah, so here I would like to rest my case. Stating that we as house believe that one language, one country can keep us together.
Thank you, Avni. That was a wonderful start to our debate. We shall now wait a minute before we move on to the first speaker of the opposition. May we now have the first speaker of the opposition to open the team's case for us?
Okay. My team, L005, will be speaking against the motion that this House believes in one country, one language. This is quite literally imposing a foreign language to a person who doesn't know a language. And the consequence of this one country, one language system has been destructive throughout the history, especially in our modern day society. Language is essentially a part of one's culture, one's identity. And if you're imposing a different language, you're disturbing their identity or destruction of culture. There are either one, it either leads to violence. Second, it leads to destruction of an entire culture as a whole. An example of this is Sri Lanka, where it leads to violence. The Sri Lanka Sinha Only Act, it led to a civil war which killed thousands of people. The cause of this war was the fact that Sinha was the language of the Sri Lankan majority, of the Sri Lankan Tamilian majority of Sri Lanka, and Indian Tamilian were in the minority, as 70% of the country's population was Sri Lankan Tamilian. As such, it led to widespread killing and again. Another example in India is that the anti-Hindi sentiment, which was particularly strong in the southern state of Tamil Nadu, where Tamil is spoken. They're completely against this fact. As such, even if a Hindi-speaking person goes to their own country in the south, they'll be either discriminated against or even killed in rare cases. And the second point, it can lead to utter destruction of culture. An example of this is how Native Americans' culture was almost completely destroyed after Columbus found America. In a couple of decades after that, the Native Indians got butchered, killed everywhere. And currently, most of the Native Americans only live in small towns or rural areas. And most of their native culture has been almost lost to history. The few remaining ones still practice it, but the degree and the diversity of their culture has been lost throughout the history. Lastly, it also leads to discrimination against other languages. It leads to discrimination of people who speak different languages, which leads to otherism, which is the exclusion of a person based on their perceived diversion from acceptable norm. As such, if it can be it can be deadly in some cases. For example, Tamil Nadu example, or Sri Lanka example. Also, communications can also happen online. This is the age of internet. So what matters is not the language barriers, as there's all Google Translate. So keep your identity, keep your culture, but imposing of a language by a government on you, that's just wrong. It should be your choice if you want to accept it or not. And use the internet for the communication if you want. In the end, my side completely disagrees with this one country, one language motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashutosh. That was a wonderful start to the case of the opposition. We shall now wait a minute again before we move to the second speaker of the proposition.
Can I start?
Yes, Vansh. If you're ready, please do.
Yes. Good morning to one and all present here. We are here to discuss about the topic that this house believes in one country, one language. And I personally believe that this talk is the need of the hour. If we talk about the economic perspective of this topic, then this concept can collectively bridge a lot of communal gaps and help in the economic progression of a nation. Linguistic differences have proven to be a threat to a lot of small-scale businesses and even to the military forces which are necessary for the internal security of the nation. Also, one country, one language will help us in uniting the country and would enable to build a strong national identity on many international forums. Also, this concept can improve our public administration, as it would help us in understanding the thoughts of other persons. It would help us in understanding the problems which the other person is facing, and it would increase our ability to give the solutions. As the first opposition speaker said, that this would lead to the destruction of culture. As we all are Indians, let's talk about this topic more minutely in India's perspective. India has always shown a glory that it has 22 different languages, 415 different dialects. But is it really a true sense of glory? No, I don't think so. One speaking other language cannot understand the knowledge which is written in different language. If the knowledge in one language cannot be spread to others, then is it really not a sense of destruction of that culture? I think that this is that one country, one language can promote the culture as well. It is necessary that it is necessary for us to have one language to represent us on international forums, as it would as it would lead to other foreigners to learn our language and to understand us for trade, for business and education. So with that, I would like to end my speech with saying that one language, one country is the necessary thought of present era. Thank you.
Thank you, Vansh, for taking the case forward. We shall now wait a minute before we move on to the second speaker of the opposition.
Can I start?
Yes, it's almost
Okay.
time. Please.
Okay. So I would like to first of all rebut a few points that both the speakers said. The first speaker brought up the mention of the Bible. And again, this gives a great example to us that why the Bible? Why not any other religion? Now that will cause, again, social unrest because if you have a global unity, first of all, I don't think that the other team understood the whole topic. It's about a global community. India is its own country, for sure. And that means that it's already a unity on its own. Now we're talking about on a global scale, all countries, or at least all societies are uniform. And first of all, that is highly unrealistic because humans do not have the psychological capacity to be a singular functioning unit. There will always be individuals and separate groups and individual identities to each group. Now, I would also like to bring up that who decides anything for a global community? Now, if you say the majority vote or whatever, think about it. If we have a global community or a global unity, how are we going to superimpose on people, first of all, and how are we going to decide who superimposes? Because there'll be so many minorities that the amount of minorities will almost be a similar amount as a majority. Now, India is a diverse country, and the second speaker, said that India, if it is united, then it is easier for people to communicate with. But however, I disagree because it allows individuals to identify themselves as their own facet instead of just a facet or just as everybody else. They do not want, no one wants to feel like they are just everybody else. Everyone has their own beliefs and everyone has their own individual identity, and a group identity is something that people can collaborate together. Now, this, if you want to focus on this group identity, there's no way that a global community can be formed without discrimination. Now, discrimination for minorities in a global from a global unity brings a perfect environment for racism, and for racism to grow and harbor like cancer. Now, societal peace is also another issue I would like to talk about, because societal peace will be extremely disturbed by a global unity. Because, okay, the idea in itself seems very naive, but if you have a global unity, societal peace, societal peace, because people will start discriminating from each other, as I mentioned, and that will disturb societal peace. Now, along with that, I would also like to say that emotions do not matter in a state of global unity. We're talking about a global unity. We're not talking about, emotions, because emotions play a role on individuals, not as a global unity. Now, along with that, I think the first speaker mentioned the Balkan Wars, and I would like to bring up another example of Czechoslovakia, which used to be a united country. However, because of its geopolitical and societal situation, and because of an imbalance between the two races, between the two people, we can see how it destroyed them economically, because they fell apart, and along with that, they also got controlled by Russia. Now, another small issue I would like to bring up on is the linguistic imperialism that will come along, because that will bring, again, racism and even more societal groups to split apart from each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Advait, for taking the case forward for the opposition. We shall wait a minute again before we move to the third and the last speaker of the proposition. Can we have the third and the last speaker from the proposition to close the team's case for us?
Yes, ma'am.
Please begin, Sanya.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Today I will be speaking in favor of the given motion, that is, the House believes in one country, one language. The one nation, one language ideology is the belief that monolingualism, or the use of one single common language, is important for social harmony and national unity. First, let us understand the positive side of the coin and then understand if it outpowers the negative side of it or not. First, if one nation will follow the principle of one language, communication and transportation of ideas and goods will become smooth and more efficient. Second, since all the people will be acquainted to a common language, the fear of being marginalized or sidelined because of linguistic differences will be curtailed as well. Third, it will promote nation's integrity and bring people together. Not to forget, it will also instill a sense of belonging to the nation and its people, since they all will have one common ground to share. Talking about the possible cons. For a country with people of varied linguistics, learning a new common language could be a little problematic in the short run. Agreed. However, it must be noted that in the long run, it will help them to integrate with the larger public. It will lead to their progress in the socio-economic environment. Let's talk about India, for example. If someone from the east of the country travels to the west of the same country, he will have a huge dilemma communicating to the local people and will not be able to have his queries cleared. People from the same nation are having problems connecting with each other because they speak different languages. Talking about the fix of hampering cultural diversity. Learning a language that is going to help you interact with a larger audience, that will help you grow and progress, will not be a setback for your culture. We are not asking you to give up your festivals, give up your religious practices. No, we are not. You can still follow and propagate your culture and use your traditional language with people of your culture, but we do want you to be acquainted to a language spoken by a majority because it is going to help you yourself on a personal level and the nation too. It's a win-win. Also, the national language of a country makes the people of that country unique from others. According to pewresearch.org, language far and away is seen as the most critical form of national identity. Majorities in each of the 14 countries polled say it is very important to speak the native language to be considered a true member of the nation. It is the cornerstone of national identity. Now, the opposition claimed that imposing one language will lead to destruction of culture. But the whole point of imposing one language is to preserve the culture of a nation as a whole. And no, it does not lead to discrimination. That is not why we are imposing this policy. Sharing a common language will in fact bring the people together so that they don't discriminate against each other and consider everybody equal. And if that will happen, societal peace will be preserved instead of being disturbed. With that, I would like to say in a nutshell, I firmly believe that the House should believe in one nation, one language. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanya, for closing the proposition's case for us. We shall wait a minute before we move on to the last speaker of our debate, the third speaker from the opposition. Can we have the last speaker of our debate, please?
Sure. I'd like to begin with the fact that one country, one language does not only pertain to this one single problem of one country, one language. It has a bigger notion to it, and that is the majoritarian rule. Majoritarian rule we've seen throughout the world, and it comes with the dynamics of authoritarianism, imposing something on people that they do not want to agree with. And there are going to be people who do not agree with something, so why even impose that on them? We've seen that with the cases, as previously mentioned, with my friends in the opposition in itself, with the Sri Lankan civil wars, the Tamilian protests. And even a new example I'd like to bring up, the Shia Muslims in Saudi Arabia who were executed, tortured, brutally treated because they live on the land where the oil is, but they're the minority, so who even cares, you know? We are exploring the themes of discrimination, oppression, otherism. We've seen that with the movie case of Chennai Express, the way we were portrayed South Indians. As a South Indian, I can say that it did really offend me, and it did really showcase how it functions. And the proposition continually tried to make this argument that it is not the linguistic differences, you know, it leads to social unity, this conformity that can lead to social harmony in itself. No, the reason why you cannot accept linguistic differences is because of ignorance and small-mindedness. If you can't accept the fact that a country has different cultures, something that is a pride of the country in itself, India, then what are you doing? You're not looking at the themes of authoritarian regimes and how are they formed? It forms with this majoritarian perspective that since we are the majority, we will oppress the minorities. And you're doing that over and over again. Impositions are no joke. It's a long thing to actually think about. The Tamilian protests did not happen for nothing. People were scared that they would be discriminated in the country that they live in. And that happens to people even to this day, from the northeast to the south. What is happening? This is an actual growing trend. I can see from personal experiences growing up in the North India. I was bullied every single day because of the way I spoke. I spoke funny, I looked funny, and all of this happens. This was not because of linguistic differences, and I'd like to bring this here now. Even if you made me speak Hindi the way you do, it would still have the same consequences because of the ignorance people have, because of the small-mindedness. If they could not make fun of my language, they'd make fun of my history. And this has happened to multiple people in this country, from the Bollywood film industry to every single aspect of society, from racist jokes to whatnot. I'd like to bring up so many abhorrent misinterpretations made by the opposition in itself. One language, are you sure that actually leads to social peace? And was that the only cause of social unrest in itself when you give example of why the World War even began? There are multiple factors that are going to be involved. You can't just make that big assumption that it's because the people did not want to accept this. People do care about their cultures, and you have to be sensitive about that. There are multiple solutions to multiple problems, and this is not an excuse for the horrors that came after that. And you talk about vote bank politics, but really, is it that bad to be identified for your culture and your linguistic diversities? Is it not better if the proposition actually acknowledges the fact that people are going to be from different cultures? This were the claims made by the speaker one of the proposition, and you kept on talking about this global trend. But you've gotten the topic wrong. This is about the country in itself. How will we communicate globally if we have one language in the country in itself? Why can't the speaker, the representative of one country, speak in the language they want to speak in? Why does it have to be that they have to speak in the majoritarian language? It has already led to so much discrimination and so much of an unrest between people because they believe that they're not being accepted. Do we still want to continue that? Do we still want to continue this monolingual way of being? This is already prevalent despite the fact that it's not even made official. That is dangerous. That is dangerous because it shows that we are not accepting. It shows that we are ignorant to other people's beliefs. Peace and harmony can be allocated if you just understand the perspective it is coming from. If you don't do that and make core assumptions, what are you going to accept from people? You talk about internal security issues. Do you have any proof for that? Is there any proof that it has led to any internal security issues? I don't think so. There is no documental evidence that you have brought up. You can't make an assumption of this sort and then just imagine that people from different languages are the ones doing this. It's absolutely unbelievable that people would do that. And there were multiple points brought up without any sufficient evidence. But we do know the social situation of this country. We do know how much people want to be diverse and how majoritarian rule and the authoritarian dynamics are actually affecting us. I'd like to conclude my argument now by saying this. We do not have a dilemma by traveling from one place to another in the same country. As someone who comes from an army background, I can say that I've traveled to every section in the country. I've explored every single culture. And I can tell you, I've enjoyed every single one of them. And I've been able to communicate with them by learning something new. That's a notion that you must appreciate. One country, one language will not work in diversity, even in the long run. It just won't, because people want to be accepted for who they are. And if we don't understand that, we're not understanding people at all psychologically. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina, for closing the debate for us. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This was the semi-finale of the September Open Round.